The operating room lights blazed like a cold sun on Christmas Eve, and Dr. Marcus Whitmore stood over the small body of a 9-year-old boy whose heart was failing. Outside, carolers sang of peace and joy, but inside this sterile chamber, Marcus fought against time itself, his skilled hands moving with practiced precision through the most delicate surgery of his career. He had canceled his family's holiday plans, ignored his wife's tears, and walked away from his own children's disappointed faces because he believed that money and reputation mattered more than anything else in this world. What he didn't know was that in exactly 48 hours, a grieving mother would return to his office carrying something that would shatter everything he thought he knew about success, about sacrifice, and about what it truly meant to save a life. If you believe in the power of kindness, in second chances, and in stories that remind us what really matters in life, please take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear it, leave a comment below about a time someone showed you unexpected compassion, and subscribe to our channel so we never miss another story that could change the way you see the world. Marcus Whitmore had built an empire on precision and excellence. At 43, he was the most sought-after cardiac surgeon on the East Coast, commanding fees that made hospital administrators wince and patients' families take out second mortgages. His hands had saved hundreds of lives, but his heart had grown cold and calculating over the years, measuring every decision against the currency of prestige and profit. He drove a Mercedes that cost more than most people earned in 2 years, lived in a mansion that echoed with emptiness, and wore watches that could have fed struggling families for months. His wife, Sarah, had learned to smile through the loneliness, and his 2 teenage children had stopped asking when Daddy would come to their school events. Success, Marcus told himself every morning in the mirror, required sacrifice. What he never admitted was whose sacrifices he was truly making. The boy on his operating table that Christmas Eve was named Daniel Cooper, and he had come to Marcus through unusual circumstances. The family had no insurance, no significant savings, and no hope of affording Marcus's standard fees. But Daniel's case was extraordinary, a complex congenital defect that most surgeons would touch, and Marcus had agreed to take it on for reasons even he didn't fully understand. Perhaps it was the challenge, the chance to add another impossible victory to his legendary reputation. Perhaps it was the way the medical journals would document his brilliance. Or perhaps, buried deep beneath years of carefully constructed indifference, there remained a tiny spark of the idealistic young doctor who had once believed medicine was about healing people, not building fortunes. The surgery lasted 11 hours. Stretching from Christmas Eve into Christmas morning. Marcus's team grew exhausted, their shoulders aching and their eyes burning, but Marcus himself seemed tireless, driven by something beyond physical endurance. He reconstructed tiny vessels, repaired damaged chambers, and essentially rebuilt a child's failing heart with a skill that bordered on miraculous. When Daniel's heart finally beat strong and steady on its own, when the monitors showed stable rhythms and healthy oxygen levels, Marcus allowed himself the smallest smile of satisfaction. Another impossible case conquered. Another testament to his superiority. He peeled off his gloves, gave instructions to his team, and walked out of the hospital into the cold Christmas morning without visiting the recovery room or speaking to the family who had spent the night on their knees in the waiting room chapel, praying for their son's life. Marcus went home to his silent mansion, where Sarah had long since given up waiting, where his children had opened presents without him, where the Christmas dinner had grown cold hours ago. He poured himself an expensive scotch, sat alone in his study surrounded by framed degrees and awards, and told himself this was the price of greatness. Outside his window, the world celebrated togetherness and love while Marcus celebrated alone in his self-made prison of achievement. Daniel recovered beautifully over the next 48 hours, his young body responding to the surgery with resilience that amazed even the most experienced nurses. His mother, Rebecca Cooper, stayed by his bedside constantly, holding his small hand, singing to him softly, and thanking God and the surgeon who had saved her son's life. She was a thin woman with tired eyes and worn clothes, a single mother who worked 3 jobs to keep food on the table, and who had sold everything she owned to scrape together even a fraction of what this surgery would cost. The hospital had agreed to a payment plan that would take her 20 years to complete, and Rebecca had signed those papers without hesitation, because no debt was too great if it meant her son could live on the day. After Christmas, Rebecca asked to see Dr. Whitmore. The nurses tried to explain that he didn't typically meet with families post-surgery, that he had already moved on to other cases, other patients, other concerns. But Rebecca was persistent, and something in her quiet determination made them relay her request. Marcus, annoyed at the interruption to his schedule, agreed to give her 5 minutes in his office, already planning the polite dismissal he would offer, the professional distance he would maintain. Rebecca walked into his office carrying a small package wrapped in newspaper comics because she couldn't afford proper wrapping paper. She sat across from Marcus with a dignity that surprised him, her back straight despite obvious exhaustion, her eyes clear despite the tears that gathered there. She placed the package on his expensive desk, and Marcus stared at it with confusion and growing discomfort. She began to speak, her voice soft but steady, and she told him that she had nothing valuable to give him, no way to truly repay what he had done for her son. She explained that she had spent the last 2 days thinking about what she could possibly offer a man who seemed to have everything, a surgeon who charged more for a single procedure than she would earn in 5 years. Then Rebecca told him what was in the package, and Marcus felt something crack. Inside his chest, some carefully constructed wall beginning to crumble. Inside that newspaper wrapping was a child's drawing, created by Daniel during the brief hours he had been awake after surgery. The boy had drawn a picture of an angel, but the angel had a surgical mask and a stethoscope. Beneath the drawing, in shaky letters that revealed how weak Daniel still was, he had written words that would haunt Marcus for the rest of his life. You gave me my life back on Christmas. That makes you my angel. Thank you for loving me enough to save me. Marcus stared at that drawing, his throat tightening, his vision blurring, all his carefully maintained composure shattering like glass. Rebecca continued speaking, explaining that Daniel believed the surgeon had chosen to operate on Christmas because he loved helping children, that he had sacrificed his own family time because he cared so deeply. She said her son talked about wanting to become a doctor too someday, about wanting to be like the angel who had saved him. And then Rebecca said something that broke Marcus completely. She told him that Daniel prayed for Dr. Whitmore every night now, asking God to bless the kind man who had given up Christmas to make sure a little boy could have more Christmases to come. Marcus couldn't speak. He sat there holding that crude child's drawing, that priceless artwork created with crayons and hope, and felt tears running down his face for the first time in years. All his awards and achievements, all his wealth and reputation, suddenly seemed hollow and meaningless compared to this simple gift from a grateful child who saw him not as a skilled technician or a commodity but as a hero who had chosen compassion over convenience. The truth crushed him with unbearable weight. He hadn't operated on Christmas out of love or kindness. He had done it for ego, for the challenge, for another story to tell at medical conferences. But this child and this mother had given him something he didn't deserve, a grace and gratitude that revealed everything he had become and everything he had lost in his pursuit of success. Rebecca stood to leave, thanking him one final time, and Marcus found his voice at last. He asked her to wait, and then he did something he had never done before. He picked up his phone and called the hospital billing department, and with Rebecca watching in confusion, he instructed them to mark Daniel Cooper's entire surgical bill as paid in full, to cancel the payment plan, to erase the debt completely. Rebecca gasped, tried to protest, but Marcus wasn't finished. He told her about a fund he was establishing that day, a foundation that would cover surgeries for children whose families couldn't afford care. And he named it the Daniel Cooper Foundation because a 9-year-old boy had taught him what his medical degree never could. If this story has touched your heart, if you felt something shift inside you while hearing it, please let us know by hitting that like button, sharing this video with someone who needs hope today, and leaving a comment about what this story means to you. Your engagement helps these messages of compassion reach more people who need reminding that we're all connected, that kindness matters, that it's never too late to change. Marcus began meeting with his patients' families after that, meeting them, learning their stories and seeing their humanity. He reduced his fees dramatically, created scholarship programs, and started volunteering at free clinics. Most importantly, he went home earlier, showed up for his children's games and recitals, and remembered how to hold his wife's hand and mean it. His colleagues thought he had lost his mind, throwing away the empire he had built. But Marcus understood something now that no amount of money could teach. He had been dying inside his success, and a child's simple gratitude had given him back his own life. Years later, Marcus would keep that crayon drawing framed in his office, refusing to replace it with his prestigious awards. Whenever he felt the old temptations creeping back, whenever ego threatened to overshadow empathy, he would look at that angel with the surgical mask and remember the real meaning of his calling. And sometimes when Daniel Cooper stopped by to visit during his medical school breaks, Marcus would look at the young man he had saved and feel genuinely saved in return. Before we end, please take a moment to comment below with the words "kindness changes everything" if you believe in the power of compassion to transform lives. The wealthy surgeon had operated on Christmas, and what came back was not gratitude wrapped in wealth but truth wrapped in newspaper comics, a gift more valuable than anything money could buy. A reminder that the greatest success is measured not in what we achieve, but in who we become and how many lives we touch with genuine love along the way.